Welcome back to our coffee talk. I'm Keith. This is Terry. And we talk about everything, from senior living, retirement, just about anything that we can think of and that you guys may ask. Today, we're going to be talking about a question that one of our listeners asked us is when do we think, in our opinion, is the best time to retire? Again, thank you for joining us today. So grab your coffee and let's talk.
There's a whole lot to consider when you're
Yes.
thinking about retirement. One thing is, what's the state of your investments?
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing as far as that goes in your savings? Another thing would be is, are you going to receive a pension? Like some people get a pension for the rest of their lives, so that factors in. And another big thing to consider is debt. Do you have debt? Because that will play a part in
Yes.
when is the best time for you to retire. Another thing to consider is when to claim Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
Because the later that you wait to claim it, the more that you will draw. But is it worth waiting that extra time in order to get that extra money? So, another thing to think about is,
Yes.
what is your life expectancy? I mean, if you live in a family where the people die in their 50s, well, I'd say go ahead and get
Retire.
it as quick
Yeah.
as you can.
No brainer there.
But if you live in a family where there's,
Longevity.
yeah, where you have longevity in your family, then you might want to wait till later on.
Yeah.
It's just all dependent on you and your situation. Retirement is not a one size fits
No.
all. Everybody has to make their own decision. We thought about it and we thought, the time that we would have to make up for delaying, it wasn't
Yeah.
worth it to us. So we just went ahead and took it early.
Yeah. And we're glad we did.
Another thing that you have to think about and consider
And we've talked about this several times, but
is health insurance.
yes.
Because if you retire before you are eligible for
Like you
Medicare,
did.
which I did,
Yeah.
you have to have health insurance. And I think that is the number one thing that delays people from retiring, because they want to work as long as they
Yeah.
can till they are eligible for Medicare. And that way they
Yeah.
can get their health
And
insurance.
some people they retire, but they get a part-time job just to have money for their health insurance.
Yeah. So that's something to consider.
Yes.
And that's a big thing because health insurance is not cheap these
No.
days. It's definitely not cheap. And
Yeah.
we all have to
You
have
gotta
it.
have it.
It's you do. You
Yes.
have to have it.
Yeah.
So what I did is I had 2 years that I had to provide medical insurance. So I got on the healthcare.gov and just looked for an affordable plan. And I was on that for 2 years until I was eligible for Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever you have to do, that is something to consider.
But you got to plan for it. We had to plan for it.
You have to put that into your budget.
Yes.
And I know people who retired in their 50s, but they had a good nest egg saved. They're not going to draw Social Security for a while. And so they're living on their savings and they have to pay health insurance. But you have to figure that in because that's a big chunk of your monthly income is health insurance.
Yes.
So also factoring in
Yeah.
on when to retire is what lifestyle do you want to live? We wanted to travel. So we had to save more than maybe somebody who just is going to stay home and hang out.
Mm-hmm.
So what lifestyle do you want? Do you want to travel the world? If you do,
Yeah.
you're
Everybody's
more
different.
money.
You know, like Terry said, we wanted a lifestyle where when we can, we want to be out traveling, go to the beach. If we want to go out to the country and do exploring and hiking, we can do that. But we also wanted to be able to spend time with our grandkids, and we do that. So everybody's different.
Right. So you just look at your situation and you have to weigh all the options. I can't tell you when the best time to
Yeah.
retire for you is. and nobody could really tell us. We had to be aware of our situation and know. And no matter when you do it, there's going to be some fear involved when
Lots
you
of
actually
fear.
pull the triggers.
Yep.
Like, oh my gosh, can we do this?
Yeah.
Because you don't know. It's an unknown.
Yes.
You've worked your whole entire adult life. You've never not worked. So it's an unknown territory, and it's scary.
Very scary.
But it's the best thing. We're having
Yeah.
the time of our life. We highly recommend
Yes,
retirement. We love it. Now, for some people, like I know individuals in particular, they retired. They were looking so forward to it, but they hated it because they needed that structure of every day, and they got bored. They needed something to do.
Socializing.
So they went and worked part-time.
Yes.
And if that's what you want to do,
Go
and
for
that's
it.
what makes you content and happy, then
Yes.
do it. Nobody can tell you what your retirement needs to look like.
That's the best part of retirement, is that you're in charge of your retirement. You're the one that says, okay, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. If you say, hey, I'm going to get a part-time job because you want to, you're in charge, go do it.
Yes, that is the absolute best part about
best
retirement.
benefit
Is just being your own boss. You do what you want when you want. Another thing to consider when you're thinking about retiring is your family dynamics. Like, if a husband retires and then their wife is still working, is that going to work? Is she going to like have resentment? Well, you get to stay home and sit on the couch and I got to go to work, or the opposite. Maybe she retires and the husband's still working and he resents her not being able to. You have to know your family dynamics. We decided, even though I was not going to get as much Social Security as if I waited, we decided we were going to retire together.
Yes.
So I retired on a Thursday. He retired on
the next
Friday,
day.
And we retired together because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to enjoy this phase of life together.
Yes. And I didn't really want to hear, well, you're retired and I'm not.
Another thing to consider is, are you emotionally ready for retirement? It is a new, different phase of life that we have never experienced before. And some people may need to mentally prepare for that. You also may want to seek out professional advice. We have 2 financial advisors, and we sought advice from both of those before we finally pulled the trigger and retired. So there is something to be said for seeking counsel and getting other people's opinions to know, is it a good time or is it not a good time for you to retire? There's just so much to consider. And we wanted to talk about this today because, like we said earlier, we can't tell you when the best time to retire is. That's your decision. But there is a lot of things you need to consider before making that decision. And we're so glad we retired when we did. We are so glad, and we love retirement. We know people that don't like retirement, but we absolutely love it. So if you have something you would like for us to talk about in a coffee talk, let us know in the comments. We'll see you next time on Retired and Loving It. If you'd like to see more of our videos, click the video that just popped up on your screen.